This presentation is called Day 2. So Day 1 is you go live on v10. Now what's next? We have Mr. Richard Stout and Mr. Keith Whalen. Without further ado, here are our presenters.
Woo! Thank you, Jackie.
Thanks. All right, thanks everybody. Richard Leigh Stout here, joined with Keith Whalen, and we are RPI Consultants.
There are lots of great picks of RPI Consultants in our different presentations.
All right, so today we're going to talk a bit about what's going on among our customer base now that most of our customers have recently upgraded their Lawson system,
Which was the
to version 10.
major project that a lot of them undertook over the
Exactly. So it took a lot of
3
focus
years.
over the past couple of years getting to Lawson version 10. And now, you know, our customers are taking a look around and saying, okay, now that we've gotten over this hump,
what do we do now?
what do we do now? Where's the industry headed? Where's the market headed? And what are some things that we can do to capitalize on this new system that we've put in place? So with that, we'll take you through an overview of what we're seeing with Infor and their direction. We'll talk a bit about the HCM suite in particular, and we might have a special guest, I understand. We'll just have to see. Then we're going to give you 4 quick wins, easy things that you can implement in your Lawson 10X environment today without buying any software. So easy ways to help your end users get some more benefits out of the software you already own, already have in place today. We'll touch on a few things that are new in Lawson 10X. And since I'm giving the presentation, it's going to have a real techie
a lot of IPA in your future.
Yeah, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about IPA 11. And then we'll wrap up with, you know, where are our Day 2 initiatives across the various functional areas, and summarize with a roadmap to the future.
Sounds great. I'm very excited. So this presentation, we first did it, I think, back in April-ish or so, both for our webinars at the Florida Lawson User Group. So now you've taken this out over the summer, and this is where it landed. So hopefully it goes well. So I'll take this one real quick. You know, where Infor is headed. Obviously, there's a lot of elements to the strategy, and everything doesn't happen overnight. We know one of the really big things is that they want to go cloud. But what does that really mean? What that means is that Infor's or Lawson's old model of having a great variety of Lawson solution footprints across many different versions and patch levels and on different platforms and technologies is not the future that Infor wants to head to. They want to become a more modern software service provider because it's much easier to develop when most of the client base is unified on the same system in the same version. And when you have all these different iterations, and if we know anything, it's that the speed of change of business applications is only going to accelerate as we go forward. So in terms of that direction, that's a lot of where their investment is. Ultimately, not just cloud, but multi-tenant at the same time. Infor loves customers just like we do, so they have a lot of options to accommodate everyone. We also know that they're trying to transform business applications to be consumer grade. This is the make them beautiful. Don't make these gray boxes where you have to, you know, command prompt what form and product line you're going to. Make, you know, landing page, dashboard driven, role based, intuitive navigation. They focus a lot on creating industry specific suites. So they are taking some of the products that might apply to say healthcare or public sector, but not the other, and packaging them together. This is a similar thing where instead of having everything modularized, they're selling you a complete solution. And we think this is really important in terms of, as consultants, when we try to implement solutions that people have IPA and they have ION and they have BI and aren't missing those components. And they're definitely trying to deliver an integrated end-to-end solution.
Yeah. And you know, we've been hearing that message from Infor for quite a few Inforums now. But you know, it's not just lip service. You know, where we're seeing that you know all of this messaging really culminate and actually you make its way into the software is with version 11 of the system right now. With heavy influence with hook and loop and everything that Infor has been talking about. It's really coming to fruition here with version 11.
And in case you missed our earlier presentation, version 11 is currently not out. It's back in.
Right. It was out, but now it's in. So what is the name of the product, or what are we referring to this next generation Lawson system is
FSM 11.
FSM 11 on the finance and supply side, and then
HCM 11.
HCM 11, or we can also still use the term global HR, right?
Even though the official names are Cloud Suite, FSM,
right,
and HCM.
So I think the big thing to know is that where Lawson 10 includes 3 suites that are all at the same version level. The 11 of the solution splits off with HCM on one side and finance and supply on the other, and your HCM version can be different than your finance and supply version, and in fact they're on somewhat of a different timeline in terms of life cycle at this point, where the HCM solution is the mainstream. Version 11 is the mainstream version number on the HCM side, and on the finance and supply side, version 10 is the mainstream version, with version 11 being a little bit more of an early adopter.
Hey, you know what? I think Melissa Olson is right over here. Maybe she can come and tell us more about this very mature version of HCM 11.
I'd love to hear more.
Hey, Melissa, how are you?
Hey, guys. Good. Hey, how's it going? Okay, so...
Take us through.
Okay, thanks. So, like Richard was saying, it is the mature version. If you're not on version 11, why not? It's been around for 10 years. Granted, the earlier version, the 3.4.2 version, was a little not quite ready for prime time, but the current version, 11, has been out for a little over 3 years. Version 10 was already a lot better than the version 3.4.2. That's been out over 5 years. So the changes, anything but regulatory changes, are happening in the version 11 of the Cloud Suite. Any enhancement requests that you've put in over the years, they're not happening over in version 10, and they won't happen in version 10. All of that development's been happening in the Cloud Suite and on-premise versions of version 11. So some of the cool things that you will get straight out of the foundation without putting any of the talent management modules on are some of the as-of dating functionality. So there's a way that you can roll your system to a certain date. And because it's set as of, 1/1/2016, you can run reports out of it, see what your head count was, see what employees were active on 1/1/2016, what employees were terminated that day. Same thing, you can roll it forward. 1/1/2018, find out for your orientation classes, who do you need to put packets together for, because there'll be new hires that week. So it's a really cool functionality that allows you to see point in time for any date in your for your system data.
Yeah. And that's powered by all that auditing functionality that we have built right into the platform.
Right. So whereas the old system, version 10, 9, previous versions, you had to actually set up fields that you wanted to track and audit. You set whichever ones you wanted to go to history.
It was more of an afterthought or an add-on.
And you couldn't choose everything. You could choose from about 10 or 12 fields that you could select to get history from on HR 54 and PA 54. Not so in your version 11. It tracks every single data point as well as every touch to every data point. So if an employee changes their address, we're in employee self-service, that wouldn't track in your audit logs. Now you'll see exactly who did it and what day they did it, and you've got all of that in your audit logs. Same thing with reversals. There's not a true reversal in global HR because it does keep that audit functionality. There'll be a hash mark through anything you remove or you want to reverse out, and you can still see that action occurred, which is really good for human resources auditing when you have those auditors come in. Some of the things here that we've got, proxy manager functionality. That's something that people have been asking for years. And we've never really quite found a way to do that. We've tried all kinds of, everything short of rewriting manager self-service in order to give other managers views over employees that they might have some sort of function over, or that they might just be acting as a manager for 2 weeks whenever the person's on vacation. Before, you had to go to HR 07 and kind of trick the system into thinking another person was a manager. It's out of the box functionality here. So some of the things you can start now are just cleaning up your system, getting your jobs and positions ready to move into a matrix style organization. And then you really want to start from your reporting and determine what kind of reporting you'll need, what kind of reporting structures do you need to create for your design. And we'll go ahead and move on. And this is a really, really great function here. Moving org units or process levels back in the old days meant you had to essentially deactivate a process level, create a new one, and then go bring all your employees over with all of the new structure. Now you're able to easily just drag and drop or copy and paste an organization unit under a new reporting structure. So here you'll see on this slide, it shows move under a different org unit. And you will assign the org unit you want it to now report to, hit OK, and your effective date of that organization change, and it's done. It's literally that easy.
It just flies out of there.
It just flies out. And
Yeah.
when you open up your resources, your employees, you'll now see them rolling up through the new org unit with the new cost centers attached and the new supervisory structure attached. Okay, some other goodies in global HR that is part of the core foundation. Again, these are not add-ons. These are not talent management modules. These are part of the global HR feature core functionality. And those are going to be a bigger, badder position budgeting module. It kind of expands on what you're used to today in the version 10, version 9 and version 10. You've got an employee relations, occupational health, and safety management. Full modules for all of those pieces. In the old days, again, remember version 9, version 10, you had one screen for each of them. And in fact, your OC health and your safety management was literally one screen that you had to define whether it was a health incident or a safety incident. Now they're separate modules that you can really start tracking a lot of information on those incidents. The benefits for version 11, and not version 11 benefits, but the benefits administration module, has a lot of things built into it that we used to customize in your employee self-service to go through enrollment. So there's significant automation. We would have to build in process flows to say, if this occurs, then, wait for evidence of insurability, wait for, some sort of approval, guaranteed amounts, whether they're 3 times, 5 times, whatever is guaranteed. Anything outside of that, you needed EOI. We had to create IPAs to put that logic in. Mm-hmm. And now all of that is done out of the box. So it significantly reduces the customizations you have to put in, the flows that you have to put in, and really just trying to think through. It was a difficult module to roll out because there was so much logic and you couldn't just roll it out of the box. And it was kind of a heavy thing that people didn't really take on right away. So this is just pretty easy right out of the box to be able to roll out that open enrollment.
So let's take a look at that open enrollment.
Yeah, so this is a screen for one of the enrollment screens, and everything's set up very similar to what you're used to in benefits administration in version 10. So it's not reinventing the wheel. You'll set up your plans, you'll set up your rules, and
one of the big things is that you can save it at different states of.
Correct. And this is you'll see over on the left-hand side all of the menus that you'll go through. In version 10, if you didn't save it, you lost everything and you had to start all over again. And here you can see what this person has completed. They've read the instructions, they've viewed their current benefits already, and they've done some of the enrollment information. They could save it, come back at any point. If they have to go home and check in what their other coverage is, maybe that their spouse has, and want to get back in there, they're able to do that. And then here's a nice little graph report that HR gets. They can see exactly where everybody is in the enrollment process. So before, it was just kind of you knew there was some enrollments in, you could run a report off your web pending file, but there was no way to determine really who was done and who wasn't done. You can see exactly where everybody is in the process, whether it's finalized. We see a lot of them have started it, but they haven't submitted anything yet. So that's an area where you can use the notifications that are built into the system to push out and say, okay, we're 1 week out. 90% of you have started but have not finalized your enrollments. Please, get this in by X date. So all of that functionality, again, out of the box. And finally, our talent management. So these are the add-ons. This is case-by-case basis. You can determine what you want to add in. Talent acquisition has been a pretty popular one when people are moving to global HR. They use talent acquisition next because they are excited to move off of either a homegrown system or a sunsetting system and move to something that's a little bit more automated and integrated into their HRIS system. Same thing with the performance and goal. And what else are we seeing? Performance and goal and a little bit of compensation. Those seem to be the most popular ones that we're seeing that people are getting benefit out of right now. So, just determine when do you have your contracts running out for some of your other third-party vendor apps like these. And you can start planning rolling those modules out when those contracts are up. Or if you are having, paper-based performance, or you're using a lot of manual processes to move your compensation and merit process through. Those are a really good case to move to these modules.
Yeah, and we used to see that these modules were actually a driver of implementing global HR.
That's right.
To lay the foundation just so you can get here. Global HR pretty much stands on its own now as far as advantages and giving you enough reason to go for it. Mm-hmm. But if we look at some of these items in talent management, they weren't previously specialties of Infor software, so our customers had to go out to search for best-of-breed solutions or what have you, and then integration suffered, right? And the end user, the customer experience suffered, because if you're an employee in an organization and you want to interact with HR systems, you don't want to feel like you have to work with 6 or 10 completely different separate pieces of software, different websites, some internal, some external.
Some Excel spreadsheets.
Exactly.
A lot of times.
So we've seen that our customers that have really taken advantage of talent management have been able to offer a much better customer service option to the talent within their organization, which a unified user experience, which ultimately leads to better retention, happier employees.
Right. Well, thanks for letting me pop by, and I'll be back
anytime.
in a little bit. Yeah.
Ms. Olson. So as we're covering this, this is a version 10 presentation, by the way. I saw a question out there. We're just trying to put out what's out there, and honestly, if you're on version 10 and running S3 HR, really need to look at starting to plan for global HR. So anyway, what else we got?
Well, let's talk a little bit about Cloud Suite Financial and Supply Management. First off, because it's super exciting. But second, because it's really valuable to see the direction that Infor is going and what's going to be available in the next generation system when you're road mapping out some of your more short-term initiatives today. Just a high-level summary: Cloud Suite Financials and Supply Management is the sort of next generation of Lawson financial and procurement suites. The general ledger has been rewritten and rebuilt to become the global ledger, and it is much more flexible than GL was. So it allows you to go back and look at some of the restrictions that were in place in Lawson that caused you to implement GL in a certain way, and be free of those restrictions to implement GL the way that really makes sense to run your business, not just from a regulatory reporting aspect, but from a true operations management aspect. A lot of our customers that are on Lawson GL also probably have been there for quite a number of years, maybe were a much smaller organization or much differently sized or shaped organization when they implemented. So this is really coming at a great time for our customers to have a GL that's so much more powerful and flexible and a better fit for the makeup of what our customers look like today.
Absolutely, and I just add that when you look at planning, global HR, HCM, Cloud Suite is something you can take modular. So you can take on global HR and then some of the other pieces, but this you'd have to take whole. So
Right.
it's sort of a different consideration.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going.
So picture's worth some words. Here is a staff account.
Not 1,000, whatever it is.
Here's a staff account homepage. Well, the viewers at home can already see it.
Yeah.
The staff accountant homepage, just to get you sort of excited about the new look and feel. If you haven't seen this yet, and it lays out a lot of the different pieces of work that you're going to do all in one place. Much easier to navigate, and easier to get to where you want to be, and easier to understand what's going on, what's on your to-do list.
All right.
Let's talk about BI and analytics.
Sure.
That's even more exciting. So there's a big shift in what's going on in the reporting and BI landscape. And as we heard at Inform over the summer, a big announcement that Infor is keeping pace with this movement with the acquisition of Burst, a cloud-based analytics platform. Infor is working to integrate Burst into Cloud Suite Financials. But what's important for us as customers, maybe on Lawson 10, is to see that there's less of an emphasis on classic tabular reporting, and the future of BI is the idea of going to your customers and saying what information for you is actionable. When you get a report today that has thousands of rows and a ton of columns on it, what analysis do you need to do in order to figure out what needs to change or what do you need to act on? And can we build those rules into the analytics itself so we can highlight the exceptions, highlight the actual information, and save you the time of doing that extra manual analysis after running a basic report.
Absolutely.
So let's take a look at a picture of that. Here we have an Infor BI dashboard example. All of these, so this is a web-based dashboard, and it's very graphic, it's very touchable. I can click in on these different pieces. When I have 6 widgets on my dashboard, and they're all interconnected. And if I drill in or set a filter on one widget,
on this yellow right here.
Right, all the other widgets will be aware of that and can update their display. And we're seeing some very high-level summary information here, but that doesn't mean I don't have access to the details. It's very easy to drill in here and bring up a list of the details that are making up these various graphical elements. We also have, as part of Infor BI, our ad hoc analysis. And this goes along with the switch from using your transactional database as your source for reporting. There's a newer trend where we have a layer in between because your transactional database is optimized for what? It's optimized for transactions, optimized for your application code,
and deleting data
to interact with the data repository. And it's not super friendly for end users to try and build reports off of. So that's where we have OLAP or a data warehouse or Infor now has a system called the Infor Data Lake, which acts as a repository, which it's pretty similar to what you consider a data warehouse. The concept here is that we're taking your business data and refining it and realigning it to the point where it's very easy for an end user to pull out a cube. Here I'm looking at my cash book cube. I pulled that out. I grabbed a dimension that I want to see on my x-axis, a dimension I want to see on my y-axis, and all the other dimensions become user filters available for me. I can easily drill in on this. Another cool feature here is any of the date fields. We have automatic summarization or breakdowns based on all the common sort of date periods you might want to do by month, by quarter, by week, what have you. It'll interact with any kind of calendar you had in mind.
We've had a couple of reported disruptions in video and audio connections, so I just tell everybody to hang in there. It will not affect the recording.
Yep.
So when the recording is ready, you'll be able to catch up, but hang in there and continue the discussion.
All right, thanks guys.
Great. So what else we got here on what's new to the Lawson scene?
Is Infor document management. So Lawson has traditionally lacked a repository for business files of that are tied to transactions, right? So if you think about PDFs or TIFFs or scans, images that would go alongside a transaction in the system. This need has been met by outside imaging systems like ImageNow, what have you. Infor does have their own product. It's a product that comes from the Infor space, not the Lawson space. So if you Google it and look at demos, there are a ton of demos out there because it's a mature system, but all the demos are with the other LN and other Infor
it's part of
software.
The future. It'll be here very
But it's rolling into the Infor OS platform. The idea here being that traditionally there have been some technology components and tools that were really available on a la carte basis, right? Like you think about process flow. Some customers had process flow, some customers don't have process flow. The future with Infor applications is all customers have access to a very robust tool set, and they don't have to license the technology components. They're all available.
Solution. They license the solution.
Exactly. They license the solution. This means that individual applications can take advantage of every tool in the toolbox. They don't have to think, oh, does this customer have this piece? That's very exciting for us as consultants because it means a solution that we found one customer might develop using a set of tools would be applicable to many other customers because they're going to have a common set of tools. Say, we've had great success with this end-to-end solution at this customer, but they had Smart Notes and you don't have Smart Notes, so now we need to find an alternative way to fill the need for an email notification, right? Like that's sort of
run across all that. So
yeah,
that all sounds great, and the future sounds awesome. But what can I do now?
What can you do now?
What can I do now?
All right. So why have we tuned in here? Because we want to know what can we do with our Lawson 10 system today. Enough about the future. Let's talk about Lawson 10 for the win. The first one I want to tell you about is contextual applications. When we have presented this live, I asked the audience, raise your hand if you have Infor Mingle, and much of the audience raises their hand. And then I say, raise your hand if you've used the contextual applications. And I am shocked to see these have not really been widely adopted at all. What we're looking at in the screenshot here is our PO20 form inquired on an individual purchase order. And over there on the right side, we have an entire chain of events that have led to and come after this purchase order. We see the requisition from the PO line source. We see the receiving information for the PO, invoice matching. We even see the check number of how this invoice was paid. So yeah, all that's available in Lawson through the drill, but it's super handy to just have it floating there on the right side of the page, and I don't need to do anything to make that box inquire. It's going to constantly stay in sync with whatever I'm looking at.
I have a question. What does it take to deploy the contextual apps?
It's actually super simple. So there are 3 contextual apps that we recommend for Lawson customers. We talked about the rec to check. Invoice details is like your AP30 type screens. And then HR employee is if you have Smart Office and you're using the employee mashup, it's similar to that in that it brings information from like benefits and PA and whatnot all into an HR11 display. This software is free, basically. It's just available to you as a customer of
Download it
Mingle.
and install it.
You don't have to download it separately. It's actually already on your system.
Oh.
Yeah. And you really just have to enable it. And unfortunately, the Infor instructions for enabling it are not terribly straightforward. It's a little scattered across several different guides of how to connect all the dots. So if you'd like to know exactly how to enable these applications, drop us a note. We've put together a real handy guide, concise guide that we can send you for getting these things set up in your system.
Awesome.
The next win that we want to talk about is proxy approver functionality. So we talked about proxy manager functionality with global HR. Proxy approvers is for our IPA approvers. This is a feature that with process flow, some customers have gone to great lengths to try and build a custom solution for. Here we have it available right within IPA. The key to enabling this is there is a security class that needs to be granted to anyone who would have permissions to designate someone else as a proxy. As soon as they're assigned to that role, they have access to go into the My Proxy screen. Here, this is through the Rich client, but it's also available through the web in Basket. And I can go and say, if I know I'm going to be out of the office for these specific dates, I set up which task and what's the date range I'd like to use to assign that approval to someone else in my organization. And that gives that person the ability to come in and see items that were assigned to me for approval, and they can go ahead and approve them, and that gets tracked in the audit log. So we can see that the item was assigned to me, but my coworker was the one who actually did the approval. Third item I want to talk about is the RQC homepage. Anyone that's using RQC today should really take advantage of this. All you need to do is be on a fairly recent version of RQC, and you can click the Home tab and get to this nice consolidated view, which just saves the requester a lot of clicks, right? It's showing them, here are some recs I've recently worked on. Here's some details of the current rec I have open. Here's my quick look at my status. I've got my punch out vendors, and I've got template items if I want to order off of a template. And I've got a nice handy search right up top, right? This is very intuitive. This is what most of our customers are used to seeing when they go right. If you're shopping online, you're going to start by using a search, and you don't want to have to go to up to the shopping search link and have it be several clicks away. If you have a direct link in RQC, a bookmark from somewhere that's not coming here, just re-look at that of what page that's deep linking to. Make sure it's linking to the home page here. But there's not really much you have to do to specifically enable this feature. If you're stuck, need some help, drop us a line. We'll try and help you out, get you sorted out. And then our final quick win. Now this is applicable to healthcare customers.
It is, but it's a nice new functionality that's been needed for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. In Lawson 9 and previous versions, customers have had to use the user fields on repurposed user fields, rec line user fields, rec header user fields to track a lot of procedural information for healthcare specific requisitions. Well, Infor heard you and built those fields directly into the application. So now we have a whole new tab in RQC called the Procedure tab, where we can collect all of this information and have it flow through and be reportable and better integrated with the rest of the system.
And Miss Brittany Degler, Miss Stephanie Kowal did a YouTube on this that's available on our YouTube channel if you look for the bill only. you can get a lot more details behind how this works.
Great. So before we move on, I understand there's a question or two.
Couple of questions here. With proxy approvers, is there a restriction to prevent a higher level manager from assigning their approver rights to a lower level manager?
You, as the IPA developer, you can build that logic into your flow to see, here's who I assigned the approval to, here's who actually approved. Do they meet the fiscal approval requirements? Do they meet the policy? And if not, we can kick it back. But the system itself isn't really aware of what your approval levels are, right? Those are built in the logic of your flow. So the system isn't going to have an edit on the front end to know, hey, this person's title doesn't line up with the policy requirements.
So a similar question to our most favorite topic. Does proxy approval work for any IPA? We have several custom IPS HR flows.
Proxy approval works for any flow. I think task-based or I believe with the HR user action node as well.
So if I was a manager and I gave another manager proxy to my manager self-service, I could also give them proxy to all the things that I approve.
Sure.
Right. So this is for approvers, is basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Cool.
All right. So with that, let's touch on some what's newish in Lawson 10. As you've probably seen, there hasn't been a major version update to the Lawson 10 apps, but there have been a lot of minor updates available throughout the year. I mean, that's the general direction Infor is reducing the number of huge updates that require a long time to get deployed in production and focusing more on quickly deployable smaller updates. Just want to point out that Windows 2012 R2 is the only version of Windows Server that's supported right now for Infor applications. We'll let you know when
2016
when Windows Server 2016 hits the lifecycle guide. Landmark 11 is out. That's the version of Landmark that we're setting up right now for our customers. I mean, any customer that's implementing Landmark today, 11 is the number to be at. There's a handful of cool new features in Landmark 11. It's not a huge change. And the nice thing about Landmark 11 is if you're on Landmark 10.1.1, it's an in-place upgrade for you. Like, replace out the whole server or anything. Yeah, remember in-place upgrades.
Retro.
Yeah, so we have a handful of new features here, but I want to talk about the idea that you can extend any business object in Landmark by adding additional fields, or even adding, say, a sub-object, a detail record to that, and establishing a relationship. With the COBOL-based applications, if you have an extra bit of data that you want to store along with something, you can use a user field if there's a user field available, right? Not everything has a user field, and there's some restrictions about how you can put data in user fields. It's like uppercase, 15 characters, come on. You've got attributes, which are kind of on the side, a little difficult to navigate. With Landmark 11, any business object that you have in the system, a resource object, an employee object, a work unit in IPA, you can add extra fields, and they feel like they're native to the application. They look and feel like Infor put them there, and they're available for you for security, querying, the front end, even the label is your field name, not user field 4. And so we've had that in Landmark for a bit, but Landmark 11 allows you to actually create an entire new class as well. So beyond just adding a field, now I can add, say, a whole master detail relationship. So that's pretty exciting for us. What else do you get?
More exciting for some than others. But.
I guess. What else do you get with Landmark 11 is IPA version 11. So this is where all the new stuff has been going on in the past year and a half or so, is all in IPA 11. A handful of cool new features there. We definitely recommend you get your hands on it. Here's one of the coolest is if I need to do some troubleshooting on a flow and want to take a look at it, I can actually do so through the web interface. So Landmark 10 had a web interface for administration, but it was a little clunky, right? The Landmark 11 web interface is completely new, redesigned. It's way better than Rich Client. It's the place you want to be to administer IPA, and as part of that web interface, we have a quick view to actually look into a flow and see what it's doing. What else? What else do we have in IPA 11? More new nodes. So a bunch of new nodes that we could take advantage of in our flows, including integration with text messaging. So beyond just sending emails or dropping a notification in the Mingle inbox, now I can actually send text messages out to get people's attention.
Stuff started to get scary out there.
Yeah. Hey, you know what's even scarier? It can receive text messages and receive emails as well. So that's through the user channel. I can email my Landmark server and ask for a status on a work unit, and it will reply and let me know. I can also email my Landmark server to initiate the running of a flow, and then it has that email as input to the flow. And I can text a Landmark server and have a flow initiate based on receiving a text message.
So now you all know what Stout does with his free time.
Yeah. Mingle 12 is out and available. Anybody that's doing a Lawson 10 upgrade right now or planning to do a Lawson 10 upgrade coming up, this is the version of Mingle that you want to be building out upon. It's pretty different architecturally than Mingle 11 in that it's no longer a SharePoint application.
Meaning it just doesn't use SharePoint at all. So
Exactly.
everyone we're installing it for no SharePoint.
Right. So Mingle 12, there's no SharePoint component. It's just a standalone application. It does require ADFS authentication. So you'll need to have ADFS and IFS to tie your web single sign-on together. Mingle 12 is available for Lawson 10 customers today, and if you are implementing Lawson 10 today, this is the version that we recommend. The upgrade path for Mingle 11 is a little bit more difficult in that there's no in-place upgrade available. You would need to replace your Mingle 11 server to get there, and the prereqs are pretty extensive, so every other component of your Infor
Has to be up to
ecosystem has to be on the latest and greatest. Here we have a picture of the Lawson 10 PO20 screen under Mingle 12, and again,
with the contextual
again have my contextual app floating over on the right. Cool. So should we talk about our day 2 initiatives? What else can we do to capitalize on our Lawson 10 applications?
Hey, so to me, the main thing that I would look at, if I just upgraded to version 10, it's that it's a good period of system stability. And when you look at the 10 upgrade, it was mostly an IT project, right? It's an infrastructure change, a lot bigger than our previous upgrades, mostly IT driven. And we sought to minimize the disruption to our business users. But as we've seen in a lot of organizations, business users do have initiatives that they like to roll forward. And very often we're at a 20 to 15 year period post implementation. A lot of organizations implemented late 90s, early 2000s, and there's been a lot of functionality added to the software across multiple versions. and potentially some knowledge lost from the original implementation team. And what we found is that a business process review and optimization can yield a lot of low-hanging fruit, sometimes immediate things like reports that people didn't know they had that they're spending 3-4 hours recreating, to some recommendations on which modules or functionality that you haven't implemented to prioritize. So I think it's a good time to focus on getting stuff back to the process users, right? Those are our customers, right? That's what the system is for.
Yeah.
And also to look at it from a technical perspective on just system stability and performance and tuning Lawson to, be responsive and meet their needs.
Yeah.
I would say one of the big things, if you do one of these assessments, obviously, we're not the only ones to do them. Is, get actionable recommendations, get stuff that you can do yourself, not just a list of new software to buy. We found every single time we've done these that there's a lot of things that customers already own that they can roll out and take advantage of. Some of which they can do themselves. So talk real quick by module maybe about what some of those are.
Sure.
I think with finance you're basically looking at the rest of that financial suite other than your GLAP CB. Asset management, some low-hanging fruit. We just had a webinar this morning. Can save you a lot of time if you have any volume of assets in terms of the accounting of those assets. Project accounting / activities is the number one module that you should look at if you don't have today. It just lets you track all this additional information, most of which is probably tracked in spreadsheets today or third-party systems. And it's super flexible. It can be used by multiple areas of the organization for different needs. API automation is something that we've seen for a long time, but now we're increasingly seeing API-A as the tool to do so.
Yeah.
All of a sudden that's become very, very hot. We actually have a webinar on that on Friday. I think Mr. Brian Ayers, Mr. Ben Nichols. And it's been pretty smooth. We're pretty impressed with the product. Lease management, we've also seen a lot of movement on. There's some new requirements for capitalization of leases that are coming up effective 2018, if I'm not mistaken. Some regulatory requirements which Lawson's able to meet. That tends to be a pretty short, quick hit that customers can take on most of and just need a little bit of guidance and advice. So those are some quick hits. Also want to point out we have several dedicated webinars for asset management, activities, API, lease management, but we also have top 10 projects every finance team should do that are more focused on automation of some of your more transactional stuff. And that's the kind of stuff that I would focus on the finance side. Get your users some wins.
Great. Hey, thanks, Keith. Who could tell us about some short-term HCM initiatives?
I can.
Oh, hey, Melissa.
Hey, I'm back. So I'm noticing a lot of self-service projects going on. I think I've got 3 of them right now. And it's just really getting your users in front of their information. Instead of having to call the HCM or the HR service desk to ask about pay stubs or to change their addresses, or for managers to get information about their employees, you'll get a huge return on rolling those out. And they don't have to go big bang. There are different ways we can roll it out to different populations or different pieces. You can just go live view only without having any updates to the system. We kind of talked about global HR a little earlier, and tomorrow afternoon, Richard, myself, Jackie Dudas, another HCM consultant, and Teresa Nelson, one of our PMs, will have a session going over the methodology and approach that we use doing global HR projects. So if you are interested in doing it in the next couple of years, I'd say sit in on that to find out a little bit more about what that project's going to look like and what your role will be in that project. So, we've got some topics here that you could start cleaning up on. We've done a few global HR pre-assessments to really look at your system and say what makes sense to change now and spend the effort and time in changing now, and what to just wait until your implementation to do. And we do have a top 10 DIY projects out on YouTube that'll let you know, some of the things that you may not be using, some of the forms and fields that you may not be aware are even out there. And there have been new ones that have come out with version 10. So check that out, or email or call me to ask a little bit more about those. So,
Cool.
okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Olson.
Sure.
And over on the supply chain side, we're all about making the most out of Requisition Center. If you've not implemented approvals, setting up rec approvals or re-looking at what we can do with rec approvals, extending RQC with punch out, or maybe even looking at setting up a capital requisitioning process through Lawson. If you're looking towards contract management, which we're big fans of, the first step there is to do a master file cleanup. So you want to clean up your vendors and your item master.
There's value in master file cleanup no matter your direction.
Yeah, of course. Mobile supply chain continues to have a future with Infor. If you're live on part and cycle accounting, check out receiving and delivery. A lot of our customers have made it easy transition to expanding into the sort of lesser known MSCM modules beyond just part accounting. Always great to improve your supply chain analytics. So take a look at your data needs and see where dashboards or smart notifications could help. And always good to transition out of paper and onto electronic transactions.
There's I think there's a country in Europe that's gone completely cashless, right? They don't have any physical paper currency anymore.
Oh.
So just think of that when you think about how much paper there is in your organization. It is almost 2018, so
yeah.
It's time.
Yeah, and then of course, check out our top 10 SCM projects webinar for more detail.
If you go to YouTube and you type in RPI Consultants, there's a whole channel and there's a lot of stuff. But you know what, Richard? All these functional initiatives, I need some tech, man.
Yeah.
You got some tech for me?
Yeah, I sure do. So I have a handful of recommendations on the tech side. I mean, as you mentioned, the time right after a major version upgrade is a great time to stabilize and optimize the performance of the system. So we definitely recommend going through performance tuning and making sure that your maintenance plan, maintenance policy is solid. That you've documented everything that you need to do to administer the system. What does our administrator do on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a quarterly basis, what have you? Set up the Infor Systems console. So this is a really cool little module that adds into Lawson. This is a web administration tool that installs into the LSF server.
Monitoring tool.
Yeah, and monitoring and administration. You actually take administration actions through here.
Okay.
It's more than just showing you. But yeah, it's a great monitoring tool in that you can set up criteria for alerts. And if your performance characteristics meet whatever thresholds you want, you can have it notify you and what have you. This is free software. Infor used to sell this, but now they've made it available to the Lawson community.
So you just got to log into the downloads, download it, and then install it. Read the install guide front to back before you begin. It's a little bit of a bear, but the install guide is not the installation.
The installation, an experienced system administrator can get it done in about a day per environment. If it's your first time trying it, it'll take you a bit longer, but it's definitely something that can be done without consulting assistance if you have a strong system administrator. Also, talking about IPA and ways that we can enhance that, one thing you can do is go back to your approval flows and add reason code functionality, because this came out in a newer 10.1.1 CU, is the idea that beyond just asking an approver, do you approve or reject, we can actually make them tell us why they made that choice. Super useful to capture that information for a reject, right? Why are you rejecting? So we can set up a drop down of various options. We can have them enter a free-form message, and we can enforce that. That even works through the email. So if I'm doing an email-based approval, it'll make me make a choice that ends up in my IPA audit log. I can send that information back to the requester so they understand why that was
why
rejected.
You rejected their
and my flow can take business logic based upon that. So I can actually route this item to a different person, maybe based upon, I'm rejecting this because that's an item that we have, or maybe an item that we should have as a non-stock rather than a special. Let's get it in front of our item master, manager, or buyer. So we can actually build business logic that's keyed off of the reason that the approver provides. So we're big fans there. Other stuff we can do with IPA, this is really popular right now, is letting IPA do all of the grunt work in terms of building out user accounts into the system. Sort of the first step is to automate building Lawson user accounts. This is a pretty big part of any ESS implementation for us, because it can mean that a customer goes from managing 100 or 200 Lawson user accounts to several thousand user accounts. So we want to create those accounts based on a new hire process, and we want to terminate or disable those accounts based upon an HR termination. But that's just step one. What we really want to get to is the point where your HR or HCM system of record also becomes your user access system of record. So we can actually start moving towards driving all user provisioning and role-based security based upon organization position. Lots of cool stuff we can do there. I guess I don't have time to tell you about all of it today. So let's just dig into our roadmap.
I will point out
to the
there are
future.
several IPA webinars on the docket for later this week.
Yeah.
Including one on version 11 on Friday at 10 a.m. where Jeremy Stolfus and Jeff House are going to dive into all the cool new functionality. So for any IPA fanatics out there, there's plenty more content.
Get your questions ready.
Yes. So roadmap to the future.
It's all about preparing for change,
The
right?
one constant, right?
Getting yourself in the best position to line up and take advantage of this period of stabilization to line up for what's coming up on the roadmap. So, get involved with IPA. If you're not using IPA today,
Start.
Everyone's using IPA. Take a look if you're looking at maybe one of the landmark applications, contract management, global HR, any APIA, start getting some experience with action request approval. It's just a little bit different than Lawson transaction approval. And start playing around with Configuration Console. Even if IPA is the only landmark app you own, you can use Configuration Console to customize the in-basket. You can change what the fields display in the in-basket. It's super useful. It's also your tool to manage security structure, classes and roles over on the landmark side. So just great to start picking up on those skills, getting hands-on. Over on the reporting side, we do recommend learning about cubes. And this is not an Infor specific concept. This is an industry concept, so there's a lot of educational material out there available. These are things you can take classes on, you can buy books on them. So pretty easy access to information to up your analytics game. The same over on the development side when it comes to HTML5 and jQuery, because that is the programming languages of the front end of the future. So if you're a design studio guy now, start reading up on jQuery and HTML5. And then, of course, Infor Ion becomes your middleware platform that's at the heart of Cloud Suite Financials. And if you're on the cloud today, you might have access to that today, even with Lawson 10.
And lastly, I think one of the things you look at as you get ready for your migrations, where you will have to re-engineer all your interfaces and customizations, is sort of performing an analysis on why you have them in the first place. Hopefully many of these things that were competitive advantages that you needed at some point that the software didn't meet are now out of the box and you don't need them. But the best way to understand that is the why you built it, not the what you built. And now's a good time to start the process of working with the process owners to find out, first of all, if it's still relevant, if it's still used, and what was it designed for? What gap was it designed to address to me? Because that'll shorten the period of identifying whether those needs are going to exist in your future version 11.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's wrap it up with a project roadmap, and maybe we'll take some questions, huh?
Yeah.
So yeah, to summarize, this is a period of stabilization, and we think you should take advantage of it by doing some business process review and optimization. That's a normal thing for an organization to go through every few years. As a business process review, make sure the system aligns with the current needs, and make sure that the staff knows how to get the advantages out of the system. And you might the makeup of your staff might be pretty different than when you originally implemented. So this is a great time to look at that. If you're on Lawson HR today, we can't say this enough. Global HR is really where you want to be. Let us help you get there. Happy to talk through, give you an idea what we think that's going to take for your
and then help you
organization.
make the business case internally if that's what needed. I wouldn't ignore that is the direction that everybody needs to go in.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then on the supply side, we're pretty big fans of contract management. We
Yep.
see a lot of customers driving a ton of value out of that, and contract management is a part of version 11, so it does go forward.
Yep.
You won't lose anything by moving to it today. And then a little bit later down that path, where version 11, the mainstream HR component is there on version 11. It's a little bit more early adopter on the finance and supply chain
Yeah.
side. Most of our customers will probably find a couple of years from now
Yeah.
is a more appropriate time for
Make
them
that migration.
to make that jump to Cloud Suite Financials and Supply Management, and then to gain the advantages through analytics and BI on that side. And with that, one of you guys will read off the questions.
I'll repeat them. Just read them.
Does Infor plan to implement an automatic password reset feature in Lawson without using LDAP blind?
So the question is, does Infor plan to implement an automatic password reset feature without using LDAP bind?
Not that I know of. That's a great Carl question, though. You guys should email Carl C. But no, I don't see that on the roadmap. I think there are other tools available there. So Infor's direction is to integrate with ADFS, and you have a lot of flexibility there. So if you're looking at implementing multi-factor authentication, it's a lot easier to do in an ADFS model than a proprietary forms-based authentication model. So I think there are off-the-shelf password reset components that can plug in to ADFS.
That's it.
All right.
All right. Well, we want to thank everyone for attending. Thank you, Mr. Stout, for putting together this presentation. We hope you found it informative.